The Lapland War was fought between Finland and Germany from September 1944 to April 1945 in Finland's northernmost Lapland Province. While the Finns saw this as a separate conflict much like the Continuation War, German forces considered their actions to be part of the Second World War. A peculiarity of the war was that the Finnish army was forced to demobilise their forces while at the same time fighting to force the German army to leave Finland. German forces retreated to Norway, and Finland managed to uphold its obligations under the Moscow Armistice, although it remained formally at war with the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom and the British Dominions until the formal conclusion of the Continuation War was ratified by the 1947 Paris Peace Treaty. Prelude. Germany and Finland had been at war with the Soviet Union since June 1941, cooperating closely in the Continuation War. However, as early as the summer of 1943, the German High Command began making plans for the eventuality that Finland might make a separate peace agreement with the Soviet Union. The Germans planned to withdraw their forces northward in order to shield the nickel mines near Petsamo. During the winter of 1943–1944, the Germans improved the roads from northern Norway to northern Finland by extensive use of prisoner-of-war labor in certain areas. Casualties among these POWs were high, in part because many of them had been captured in southern Europe and were still in summer uniform. In addition, the Germans surveyed defensive positions and made plans to evacuate as much materiel as possible from the region and made meticulous preparations for withdrawing their forces. On April 9, 1944, the German withdrawal was named Operation Berk. In June 1944, the Germans started actively constructing fortifications against an enemy advance from the south. The accidental death of General Oberst Dial on June 23, 1944 brought General Oberst Lothar Dulick to the command of the 20th Mountain Army. A change of Finnish leadership in early August 1944 led the Germans to believe that Finland would attempt to achieve a separate agreement with the Soviet Union. The Finnish announcement of the ceasefire triggered frantic efforts in the German 20th Mountain Army, which immediately started Operation Berk and other material evacuations from Finland. Large amounts of materiel were evacuated from southern Finland and harsh punishments were set for any hindering of the withdrawal. Finnish forces were moved to face the Germans, which included the 3rd, 6th, and 11th Divisions, the Armoured Division as well as the 15th and Border Jaeger Brigades. Baltic. On September 2, 1944, after the Finns informed the Germans of the ceasefire between Finland and the Soviet Union, the Germans started seizing Finnish shipping. However, since this action resulted in a Finnish decision not to allow ships to sail from Finland to Germany and nearly doomed the material evacuations of Operation Berk, it was rescinded. After the order was called off, the Finns in turn allowed Finnish tonnage to be used to hasten the German evacuations. The first German naval mines were laid in Finnish seaways on September 14, 1944, allegedly against Soviet shipping, though since Finland and Germany were not yet in open conflict at the time, the Germans warned the Finns of their intent. On September 15, 1944, the German Navy attempted to seize the island of Hoogland in Operation Tärnost. This immediately prompted the Finns to remove their shipping from the joint evacuation operation. The last German convoy departed from Kemi on September 21, 1944 and was covered with both submarines and later also by German cruisers. After the landing attempt, a Finnish coastal artillery fort prevented German layers from passing into the Baltic Sea at Utah on September 15 as they had been ordered to intern the German forces. However, already on September 16 a German naval detachment consisting of the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen escorted by 5 destroyers arrived to Utah. The German cruiser stayed out of range of the Finnish 152mm guns and threatened to open fire with its artillery that outdistanced the Finnish guns unless the Finns allowed the German layers to pass. In order to avoid unnecessary bloodshed, the Finns allowed the layers to pass. A Finnish landing operation started on September 30, 1944 when 3 transport ships without any escorts departed from Oulu towards Tornio. They arrived on October 1 and managed to disembark their troops without any interference. Also a second wave of 4 ships on October 2 and a third wave of Euro 3 ships stronger Euro managed to disembark largely without trouble, with only a single ship being lightly damaged by German dive bombers. On October 4 bad weather prevented Finnish air cover from reaching Tornio, which left the fourth landing wave vulnerable to German Stuka dive bombers, which scored several hits, sinking SS Bor 9 and SS Maininki alongside the pier. The fifth wave on October 5 suffered only light shrapnel damage despite being both shelled from shore and bombed. The first Finnish naval vessels Currency Minma, Zimmer, VMV-15 and VMV-16 arrived with the sixth wave just in time to witness German Focke-Wulf FW-200 Condor bombers attacking the shipping at Tornio with Henschel HS-293 glide bombs without results. Arrival of naval assets made it possible for the Finns to safely disembark heavy equipment, which played an important role during the Battle of Tornio. Sailors on Finnish ships and German-held ports, including Norway, were interned, and German submarines sank several Finnish civilian vessels. German submarines also had some success against Finnish military vessels, including the sinking of the Mynäjä Louis. The most dire result of Finland concluding the Moscow Armistice with the Soviet Union was that now Soviet naval forces could circumvent the existing German naval mine barriers located on the Gulf of Finland by using the Finnish coastal seaways. This allowed Soviet submarines now based in the Finnish archipelago to gain early access to the German shipping in the southern Baltic Sea. Lapland, the ceasefire agreement between Finland and the Soviet Union contained requirements that the Finns break diplomatic ties with Germany and publicly demand the withdrawal of all German troops from Finland by September 15, 1944. Any troops remaining after the deadline were to be disarmed and handed over to the Soviet Union. Even with the massive efforts of the Germans in Operation Berk, this proved impossible, the Finns estimating it would take the Germans 3 months to fully evacuate. The task was further complicated by the Soviet demand that the major part of Finland's armed forces be demobilized, even as they attempted to conduct a military campaign against the Germans. With the exception of the inhabitants of the Tornio area, most of the civilian population of Lapland was evacuated to Sweden and southern Finland. The evacuation was carried out as a cooperative effort between the German military and Finnish authorities prior to the start of hostilities. Autumn maneuvers, as the Finns wanted to avoid devastation to their country, and the Germans wished to avoid hostilities, both sides wanted the evacuation to be performed as smoothly as possible. By September 15, 1944, a secret agreement had been reached by which the Germans would make their withdrawal timetable known to the Finns, who would then allow the Germans to destroy roads, railroads and bridges. In practice, friction soon arose both from the destruction caused by the Germans and from the pressure exerted on the Finns by the Soviets, and there were several incidents between the armies. The Finns deployed their 3rd Division, 11th Division, and 15th Brigade to the coastal area, the 6th and the Armoured Division to Putasja Currency RVI, and the Border Jaeger Brigade to the eastern part of the country. Initial clashes. The first open violence between Finnish forces and the 20th Mountain Army took place 20 km southwest of Putasja Currency RVI, at around 8:00 on September 28, 1944, when Finnish advance units first issued a surrender demand, then opened fire on a small German rearguard contingent. This took the Germans by surprise, as the Finns had previously agreed to warn them should they be forced to take hostile action against them. After the incident, partial contact was re-established. The Germans told the Finns they had no interest in fighting them, but would not surrender. The next incident took place on September 29 at a bridge crossing the Alhava River between Kemi and Oulu. Finnish troops, who had been ordered to take the bridge intact, were attempting to disarm explosives rigged to the bridge when the Germans detonated them, demolishing the bridge and killing the Finns' company commander, among others. On September 30 the Finns attempted to encircle the Germans at Putasja Currency RVI by way of flanking movements through the forests, and managed to cut the road leading to the north. By then, however, the bulk of the German force at Putasja Currency RVI had already left, leaving behind only a small detachment which, after warning the Finns, blew up a munitions dump. Fighting intensified on October 1, 1944. when the Finns launched a risky seaborne invasion near Tornio, on the border with Sweden. The landing had originally been planned as a diversionary raid, with the main assault to take place at Kemi, where the Finnish battalion-sized detachment Pennain was already in control of important industrial facilities on the island of Ageus. Various considerations including a far stronger German garrison at Kemi, already alerted by local attacks made the Finns change the target to Ra-paragraph currency. The Finns initially landed the 11th Infantry Regiment, which, together with a civic guard-led uprising at Tornio, managed to secure both the port and most of the town, as well as the important bridges over the Torn River. However, the attack soon bogged down due to disorganization some of it caused by alcohol looted from German supply depots and stiffening resistance. During the ensuing Battle of Tornio the Germans fought hard to retake the town, as it formed an important transportation link between the two roads running parallel to the Kmijoki and Tornionjoki rivers, respectively. Their forces initially consisted of Division Kra Currency Uttila and were later reinforced with an armoured company, 2 infantry battalions, and the machine gun ski brigade Finland. The Finns reinforced their troops with 2 infantry regiments and managed to hold the area, beating back several German counterattacks. Heavy combat lasted for a week, until October 8, 1944, when the Germans were finally forced to withdraw. Meanwhile Finnish troops were advancing overland from Oulu towards Kemi, the 15th Brigade making slow progress even in the face of meagre German resistance. Their advance was hampered by the efficient destruction of roads and bridges by the withdrawing Germans, as well as a lack of fighting spirit in both Finnish troops and their leaders. The Finns attacked Kemi on October 7, 1944, attempting to encircle the Germans with a frontal attack by the 15th Brigade and an attack from the rear by Detachment Pennain. Strong German resistance, civilians in the area, and liberated alcohol prevented the Finns from fully succeeding in trapping all the Germans. Though Finnish forces took several hundred prisoners, they failed to prevent the Germans from demolishing the important bridges over the Kmijoki River once they began their withdrawal on October 8. Further action in Lapland War. As Allied war efforts against Germany continued, the leadership of the 20th Mountain Army, as well as the OKW, came to believe it would be perilous to maintain positions in Lapland and in northern Norway east of Lingen, and began preparations for withdrawal. After long delays, Hitler accepted the proposal on October 4, 1944, and it was codenamed Operation Nordlicht on October 6, 1944. Instead of a gradual withdrawal from southern Lapland into fortified positions further to the north while evacuating all material, as in Operation Berk, Operation Nordlicht called for a rapid and strictly organized withdrawal directly behind Lingen Fjord in Norway while under pressure from harassing enemy forces. As the Germans withdrew, movement was mostly limited to the immediate vicinity of Lapland's 3 main roads, which constricted military activities considerably. In general the actions followed a pattern in which advancing Finnish units would encounter German rearguards and attempt to flank them on foot, the destroyed road network preventing them from bringing up artillery or other heavy weapons. As Finnish riflemen slowly picked their way through the dense woods and marshland, the motorized German units would simply drive away and take up positions further down the road. Finnish forces began pursuing the Germans. The Finnish 11th Division advanced north from Tornio on the road running along the Torn River while the 3rd Division marched from Kemi towards Rovaniemi. After the 6th and the Armoured Division linked up at Putasja Currency RVI they advanced northward, first towards Ranua and then to Rovaniemi. The Border Jaeger Brigade moved north along the eastern border, depositing border guards as it advanced. Due to the destruction of the road network the Finns were forced to use combat troops for repair work. At times, for example, the entire 15th Brigade was committed to road construction. Finnish forces advancing from Kemi towards Rovaniemi did not see any real action, as Finnish troops on foot were not able to keep up with withdrawing motorized German units. However, on the road leading from Ranua towards Rovaniemi there were several small battles, first at Ilama, then Kivitavo, then Rovaniemi. North of Rovaniemi the Finns encountered heavily fortified German Hutswall positions at Ankavaara. On the road running along the Torn and Muonio rivers, the German withdrawal went so smoothly that there was no fighting until the Finnish 11th Division reached the village of Muonio. At Ilma on October 7 the Finns captured documents detailing German positions, forcing them to fight a delaying action off their preset timetable. However, as the forces were roughly even numerically, the Finnish lack of heavy weapons, and exhaustion from long marches, prevented the Finnish Jaeger Brigade from trapping the defending German 218th Mountain Regiment before it received permission to withdraw on October 9. At Kivitable on October 13 the tables were turned and only a fortuitous withdrawal of the 218th Mountain Regiment saved the Finnish 33rd Infantry Regiment from being severely mauled. The German withdrawal allowed the Finns to surround one of the delaying battalions, but the German 218th Mountain Regiment returned and managed to rescue the stranded battalion. The first Finnish units reaching the vicinity of Rovaniemi were components of the Jaeger Brigade advancing from Ranua on October 14. The Germans repelled Finnish attempts to capture the last intact bridge over Kmijoki River and then left the mostly demolished town to the Finns on October 16, 1944. Finnish demobilization and difficult supply routes began to take their toll, and at Tankavaara barely 4 battalions of the Finnish Jaeger Brigade attempted, unsuccessfully, to dislodge the German 169th Infantry Division, 12 battalions strong, entrenched in prepared fortifications. Finnish forces first reached the area on October 26 but gained ground only on November 1, when the Germans withdrew further to the north. At Muonio on October 26 the German Kampfgruppe, 4 battalions, and the 6th SS Mountain Division Nord again had numerical and material superiority in the form of artillery and armour support, which prevented the Finns from gaining the upper hand, despite initially fairly successful flanking operations by the 8th and 50th Infantry Regiments. The Finnish plan had been to prevent the SS Mountain Division, marching from the direction of Kittilä from reaching Muonio, and thereby trap it. However, the delaying actions of Kampfgruppe and the destruction of the road network made it impossible for the Finns to reach Muonio before the SS Mountain Division. German retreat to Norway. For most practical purposes the war in Lapland ended in early November 1944. In northeastern Lapland after holding the Finns off at Tankavaara the Germans withdrew swiftly from Finland at Karigasniemi on November 25, 1944. The Finnish Jaeger Brigade pursuing them had by then been depleted in manpower due to demobilization. In northwest Lapland there were on November 4 only 4 battalions of Finnish troops left and by February 1945 a mere 600 men. The Germans continued their withdrawal but stayed in fortified positions first at Polojoensu in early November 1944 from where they moved further to positions along the Lapplandskriget-Seno River on November 26. The German 7th Mountain Division held these positions until January 10, 1945 when northern Norway had been emptied and positions at Lindenfield were manned. Some German positions defending Linden extended over the Finnish side of the border. However, no real activity took place before the Germans withdrew from Finland on April 25, 1945. Consequences: from the start of the war the Germans had been systematically destroying and mining the roads and bridges as they withdrew. However, after the first real fighting took place the German commander, General Lothar Dulich, issued several orders with regards to destroying Finnish property in Lapland. On October 6 a strict order was issued which named only military or militarily important sites as targets. On October 8 after the result of the fighting in Tornio and the Kemi region became obvious, the Germans made several bombing raids, targeting factory areas of Kemi and inflicting heavy damage on them. However, on October 9 the demolition order was extended to include all governmental buildings with the exception of hospitals. On October 13 all habitable structures, including barns, though making an exception for hospitals and churches, were ordered to be destroyed north of the line running from Ylitornio via Sinetta to Sodankylä in northern Finland. Though it made sense from the German perspective to do this to deny pursuing forces from getting any shelter, it had a very limited effect on the Finns who unlike the Germans always carried tents with them and did not require any shelter. At Rovaniemi the Germans initially concentrated mainly on destroying governmental buildings, but once fire got loose several more were destroyed. German attempts to fight the fire however failed, and a train loaded with ammunition caught fire at Rovaniemi railroad station on October 14, resulting in a massive explosion which caused further destruction as well as spreading the fire throughout the primarily wooden buildings of the town. German attempts to fight the fire had failed by the time, on October 16, they abandoned the now ruined town to the advancing Finns. In their retreat the German forces under General Lothar Rehndulik devastated large areas of northern Finland with scorched earth tactics. As a result, some 47% of the dwellings in the area were destroyed, and the provincial capital of Rovaniemi was burned to the ground, as were the villages of Savukoski and Enontakia paragraph. Two-thirds of the buildings in the main villages of Sodankila currency, Muonio, Kalari, Sala and Pelo were demolished, 675 bridges were blown up, all main roads were mined, and 3,700 km of telephone lines were destroyed. In addition to the property losses, estimated as equivalent to about $300 million in 1945 dollars, about 100,000 inhabitants became refugees, a situation that added to the problems of post-war reconstruction. After the war the Allies convicted Rehndulik of war crimes, and he was sentenced to 20 years in prison, although charges concerning the devastation of Lapland were dropped. He was released after 6 years. The military casualties of the conflict were relatively limited, 774 killed in action, 262 missing in action and about 3,000 wounded in action for the Finnish troops, and 1,200 Kia and about 2,000 WIA for the Germans. 1,300 German soldiers became prisoners of war, and were handed over to the Soviet Union according to the terms of the armistice with the Soviets. The extensive German landmines caused civilian casualties for decades after the war, and almost 100 personnel were killed during demining operations. Hundreds of Finnish women who had been engaged to German soldiers or working for the German military left with the German troops, meeting diverse fates. See also, History of Germany, History of Finland, Operation Tanost, World War II, Laplandskriget, Notes. References, Citations. Bibliography, Arto, Sampo. A Seveljet Vestakina Lapin's sota 1944 1945, Brothers in Arms Against Each Other Lapland War 1944 1945. Helsinki, Kajaitama Currency. ISBN A978-951-26-1726-5 Kai Jonan, Kalevo. Suomen Livasto 1918 1968 Helsinki, Meriupseerihdistisotavia, Leskinen, Jari. Jutalanian, Antti, Edstjat Kozodan Pikkujar Currency Ttila Currencyinen. Werner Zar Paragrafstra Paragraph M. Osakaisia Paragraph. ISBN A978-951-0-28690-6 Lund, Henrico. Finland's War of Choice, The Troubled German-Finnish Alliance in World War II. Newbury, Casemate Publishers. ISBN A978-1-61200-037-4. External links